Quiescent letters. What is quiescence? Quiescence effectively means to become silent. In our context here, what we're talking about are consonants that cease to function as consonants. They become silent, and they tend to blend with the previous vowel. Now there are 4 consonants in Hebrew that can do this. He, Yud, Vav, and Aleph. Now, have we seen these consonants before as a group, or at least some of them? These ones here should look familiar to you. These are our matrix lectiones. If you remember, back to our vowel chart, we had these at the top. He was associated with the A vowels, IE with or Yud with the IE vowels, and Vav with the OU vowels. And these are the consonants that were used, sometimes as consonants and sometimes to mark vowels. When they are used as vowels, they're called maters or matrix lectiones. Now, it's not surprising then that these are the ones that can quiesce. They can cease to function as a consonant and blend with the previous vowel. Now, what about aleph? Aleph actually can also be a mater. We didn't talk about that before, and it's not that common, but in a word like shena, which means to sleep, the aleph here is functioning vocalically, together with our comets, as a vowel. So aleph too can function as a mater, which is consistent with what we have here with these ones. Now let's look at an English example of quiescence. These consonants will tend to quiesce at the end of a syllable, not at the beginning. And we see that also in English. If you look at the word table, and we look at the word depot, in table we have a T at the beginning of a word, and it's functioning as a consonant. We hear the sound T. In depot, it has become silent, and it's at the end of a word, and therefore the end of a syllable. Depot, we don't say depot. So we have similar behavior in English. Now let's take a look at a Hebrew example. First, let me write up this word, Yisrael, which we've used. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Let's get it right here. Yis starts with Hidik. Yis, Ra, Yisrael. Okay, so we have Yis, Ra, El. And what I want to look at here is aleph. Here we have aleph at the beginning of a syllable, and it is functioning as a consonant. It's holding the position of a consonant. This is a CVC syllable. Now let's look at another word, Yish. Yish, Ma, El. And this has an ayin in it, and then an aleph, and then a lamed. So Yish, Ma'el, Ishmael. Now, if we look at this last consonant here, it looks kind of funny, or this last syllable. We have a C, V, C, C. C, V, C, C. Well, what kind of syllable is that in Hebrew? We don't have that. And the reason it looks like CVC, but it's not, because this one here is the aleph, and the aleph is quiescent, so it's not functioning as a consonant there. Now you can often tell a quiescent aleph because it won't have a vowel under it. Notice this one has a vowel under it, this one doesn't. So if you see an aleph without a vowel under it, particularly if it's in the middle, or it appears to be in the middle of a syllable, or sometimes at the end, then you probably have a quiescent aleph. Let's take a look at another example. This is Reshit. Oops. Re. Reshit. Reshit means beginning. The first word in the Bible is Bereshit, which is put B in front of this, in the beginning. Reishit, the syllable is here, syllable division, and here we have a quiescent aleph at the end, and it has no vowel under it. So aleph will quiesce, and you can tell because it doesn't have the vowel. Now, at the beginning of a consonant, at the beginning of a syllable, it's a consonant. At the end of a syllable is where it quiesces. What will often happen is there'll be a change in a word that will cause an aleph to move from the beginning to the end, and then quiesce. And this happens frequently when you add an inseparable preposition. If you have a word, let's imagine this is our word, and we have aleph at the beginning. If we add a l, b, or k, what will sometimes happen is this l will steal this first letter as part of its syllable, and so now this letter finds itself at the end of a syllable. Without the l, it was at the beginning. And so when you put l or b or k on a word beginning with aleph, the aleph may well quiesce because now it finds itself at the end of a syllable. Let's look at an example. Now I need a lot of space here, so I'm going to write at the top Elohim is the word I want here. God. Elo. And actually I'm going to copy this, so we need it 4 times. Let's see if we can fit it on this page. 2, 3, 4. It's a little squished, but okay. What happens if we add an inseparable preposition like l on here? Well, the first thing we have to do is we notice here we have 2 shavas at the beginning of a word. And when we have that, we need to apply our rule of shava. So by way of review, we had 2 rules of shava. One was where we have 2 simple shavas at the beginning of a word. And when we have that, the first shava becomes a hidik, and the second one goes silent. If we have a compound shava, like a chataf sagol and a regular shava, then what happens, you remember? This one, the first shava, becomes the short vowel that corresponds to the compound shava. So in this case, sagol. So this one changes to sagol, and the second one stays. So let's apply our rule of shava. Put our l there again, and this becomes sagol. So le Elohim becomes le Elohim. So our step here is rule of shava. Now, what happens is this finds itself now at the end of a syllable, and in this case it quiesces. So let's repeat our le here, and let's erase. If it quiesces, it loses its vowel. So we'll erase it. So this step is quiescence. Quiescence of the aleph. Now what often happens with aleph, as opposed to the other quiescent letters, is that when aleph quiesces, you will frequently get, or often get, compensatory lengthening. So what that means is, let me erase this here. It's already quiesced, so we've lost that. We've lost a vowel, so it makes things shorter, so this is going to lengthen now to compensate. Try and keep the same overall length. And if you're going to lengthen a sagol, what are you going to get? It's going to lengthen its family. Remember our vowel chart? We had sagol, and above it we had tsere. So this is going to become a tsere. So this here is compensatory lengthening. Now these are all the steps that happen that explain what a person would do naturally if they were speaking. Le Elohim is harder to say than Lelohim. But what we have here is a rule of shava, we have quiescence, then we have compensatory lengthening. Okay, now it doesn't always happen. Aleph will not always quiesce. Let me look at a very similar example, but a case where it does not quiesce. And this is the word, all these little dashes, Edom. You have the very same beginning, Edom means Edom. Okay, make sure I spelled that right. Edom. If we add le on there, we're going to do the same step we did before. Let me rewrite this here. Edom. So we need to apply the rule of Shava because we have two Shavas at the beginning of a word. So as before, this will become Sagol, but then it stops. Le Edom. That's how you say it. This does not quiesce. So aleph does not always quiesce. And the purpose of this module is not to try and explain the rules for when it quiesces, but rather to explain what's happening so that you can recognize it when you see it. Now let's take a look at one of the other letters. Similar behavior with the Yud. And we'll look at the word Yehuda. Yehuda. Judah. And let me copy this one as well. I think we only need this 3 times. 2, 3. And let us add our inseparable preposition as before. So we're adding an inseparable preposition. So we have to apply the rule of Shava. In this case, we apply the first rule because we have 2 simple Shavas. So the first one becomes a hidik and the second one becomes silent. Le Yehuda becomes Li Yehuda, or something like that. I don't know how you would pronounce that. Li Yehuda, perhaps. But the Yud now quiesces. So this is rule of Shava. And as with the aleph now, the Yud finds itself at the end of a syllable. Here it was at the beginning before we added this. Now it's at the end. Yud can quiesce. In fact, it does. It loses its consonantal value and starts to function. It functions as a vowel. So let's put this down. Let's erase our... Where's the erase? E. We'll erase our Shava under the Yud. And now we have Lihuda. So this is quiescence. And we don't have any compensatory lengthening as we did with the aleph. So now we have hidik Yud. Before we just had hidik. And the Yud now is part of the vowel, hidik Yud, as opposed to functioning as a consonant, which it was with the word by itself, Yehuda. So there's an example of quiescence with the letter Yud. Now aleph will quiesce more frequently than Yud and Vav. There are more examples of Yud and Vav at the end of a word where it's not quiescing. For example, the word dai, which means enough, or goy. How do you spell goy? Goy, nation. There we have a Yud at the end, and it's functioning as a consonant. Or tzav. There you have a Vav at the end, functioning as a consonant. Tzav means command. It's the word to command in the imperative form. So you're telling someone, command these other people to do whatever. Command. So, by way of review, we have 4 consonants, He, Yud, Vav, and Aleph, that can function as, or can lose their consonantal value. They can quiesce, they can cease to function as consonants, they'll blend with the previous vowel, and this tends to happen at the end of syllables. And with Aleph, you will also sometimes get quiescent or compensatory lengthening. It will lose its vowel underneath it, and the vowel before it will lengthen.